It's obvious, isn't it? If it was between you and Mom, my priority right now is Mom.
I don't want this kind of husband anymore. I am his wife, who is battling cancer. How dare he ask me to take care of his mother? Then my doctor, who had overheard the call, said to my husband,
I'm sorry, sir, but your wife just... What?
After the words from the doctor, what awaited my husband was a tragic end that could only be described as self-inflicted. My name is Vanessa, a 36-year-old office worker. My family consists of 4 people: my husband, Alan, my first daughter, Eleanor, and my second daughter, Kathy. My daughters are 5 and 1 years old, respectively. Eleanor, the eldest daughter, has been a strong woman since she was a child. She takes good care of Kathy. Looking back, it was my daughters who always supported me when I was going through a difficult time. It was natural to think that ever since my husband, Alan, started to neglect his family. I know why. It all started with Connie, my husband's mother. I have hated this woman since the beginning of our marriage. She is a very old-fashioned person and a nagger. She has been sarcastic to me for any reason she can think of, but in the end, no matter what I do, Connie doesn't like it. I heard that every family has a problem between wife and mother-in-law, so I thought it was just the way of the world when I first got married. However, a few years later, I became pregnant with my first daughter, Eleanor. During the medical checkup, we were told all along that the gender was a boy. When I told my parents-in-law about this, they were unusually kind to me. However, when it came time to give birth, I was surprised to find out that it was a girl. My parents, who came to visit me, and I laughed together about how such a thing could happen. My parents-in-law also came to see me. Unlike my father-in-law, who looked at her kindly and said how cute she was, my mother-in-law glared at Eleanor. My mother noticed right away. I'm so happy to have a first grandchild, aren't you? Vanessa, you did a great job. It was a remark that was intended to soften the atmosphere, but after the next words from my mother-in-law, the place instantly froze. Is that so? I heard it was a boy. I feel like I've been tricked by Vanessa. I raised both boys and girls in my family, but girls grow to talk back, so it's more difficult to raise a daughter. I would have loved to raise a boy again. Well, that was disappointing. Vanessa, next time, make sure to have a boy. What? What's with her? I mean, if it was a boy, were you going to raise him yourself? I glanced to the side and saw my mother even angrier than I was, with a monster-like expression. Hey, what did you just say? Are you disappointed? Do you want a boy next time? You're a woman too, right? Are you crazy? Apologize to my precious daughter and granddaughter right now. My mother is usually a mild-mannered woman, but my mother-in-law's words were so insane that she became furious. My mother-in-law flinched a little at my mother's change, but shouted back, What is this all of a sudden? It's so rude to call me crazy. It's offensive. My father-in-law, who was standing next to her, cuts in.
It's true that you're crazy. You're a fool.
My mother-in-law was quickly sent out of the hospital room. After that, my mother-in-law sent me an apology, probably forced. But such an apology could not possibly have touched my heart. I completely closed my heart to my mother-in-law. As expected, my mother-in-law was not at all interested in her grandchild, Eleanor. Nevertheless, she was very much loved by my father-in-law and my husband's sister, Melanie. And my husband, on the other hand, he did what he was told without complaint. However, he did not actively participate in the childcare. Better than doing nothing. I had heard that the husbands of my mom's friends were similar to my husband, so I just told myself it was the way it is. I gave my all to raise my child day after day, but then something happened to my husband. 2 months after our second daughter, Kathy, was born, my father-in-law had a heart attack and suddenly passed. My husband and I couldn't wrap our heads around the suddenness of the situation. My mother-in-law was very depressed. I couldn't go to places with my newborn Kathy, who couldn't even sit up yet. My prognosis after childbirth was not good either. Vanessa, are you all right? You need to lie down for a while. We'll take care of the kids. Melanie and my in-laws were very kind to me. While I lied down, I saw my husband comforting his mother ever since his father passed away. I could understand my husband's concern for my mother-in-law, but I also thought that he should be the one taking care of the children as a father. Then they seemed to notice my gaze. My mother-in-law came up to me and said, "Hey, why are you sleeping? You're a wife. You're supposed to take the initiative in times like this." My mother-in-law's shrill voice echoed in my head. I looked at my husband, who was standing behind my mother-in-law. He quickly looked away. I was very sad. It seemed that my mother-in-law was the odd one out among the in-laws. "Hey, Mom, Vanessa just had a baby 2 months ago. How can you talk to her that badly? And you too, Alan. You should care a little about Vanessa and your daughters. Also, don't do such embarrassing things in front of your father." My sister-in-law said something like that to them. The in-laws also sympathized with my sister-in-law's words. They looked at the two of them coldly. My mother-in-law and my husband were quite embarrassed. When their faces turned bright red, they glared at me lightly and returned to where they had been. After that, my husband went to his parents' house every day for some reason and came home late every day. I had to do all the housework and childcare by myself, and the number of quarrels between us increased day by day. "You should take care of the kids once in a while. It's too hard for me to do everything by myself every day," I would tell him, and he would reply,
What are you talking about? That's your job right now. And saying that raising kids is hard? You're a mother, right? You're crazy.
I was so shocked by my husband's words that I didn't even feel like talking back. After a while, I received a notice to get a cervical cancer checkup. I had been getting checked regularly, so I thought I would be fine, but I took the test just to be sure. However, I was told that I had cervical cancer. I was speechless. There had been no abnormalities just a short time before, so it seemed that I had developed cancer within a short period of time. Of course, the first thing that came to my mind was my beloved daughters. I have 2 daughters. I still have to live. I couldn't stop the tears from flowing.
Don't worry. You're still in the early stages. Let's work together.
The doctor, who looked cold but had a kind voice, reminded me of my father. I was going to be hospitalized for a while, so I asked my parents to take care of my daughters. "Please take good care of my daughters," I told them on the day of hospitalization. "Of course! I'm so happy to be able to live with my grandchildren for a while. Vanessa, it's going to be okay." I thanked my mother for the bright response. Eleanor, my eldest daughter, looking at me worriedly and said, "Mommy, you are coming home from the hospital, okay?" "Yes, I'll definitely be back, good as ever," I answered, fighting back tears. I told my husband about my illness, but what was his reaction?
Early stages? Good for you. You should ask your parents to take care of the kids. I've got work to do, and I'm worried about my mom, so...
I was so disgusted at my husband's decision to leave the children to my parents as if it were a matter of course. By the way, my husband and mother-in-law never came to visit me once during my stay in the hospital. When I get out of the hospital, I'm going to divorce him immediately. In my mind, that was the best choice I had, but my husband made a ridiculous request to me. We've had a call from your husband. He seems to be in a very bad mood." One day, as I was getting close to leaving the hospital, my phone started receiving a large number of calls from my husband in the morning. Naturally, I couldn't bring myself to answer them, so I ignored them. It seemed that he had given up calling me and decided to call the hospital. I wonder if he's thinking of apologizing. With this thought in mind, I picked up the phone.
Why didn't you answer your phone? It's important. Come home right now.
What? After that, I was speechless at the heartless words that came out of my husband's mouth.
Mom fell down the stairs and sprained her leg. I have to go to work, and you're getting out of the hospital soon, right? Can't you get out a little early? Melanie's not around. You can take care of Mom instead.
I couldn't keep my mouth shut. What are you talking about? You know I'm in the hospital with cancer, right? Are Are you treating me the same as if I have a sprain? That's going too far, isn't it? Are you crazy? I've been thinking for a while now. Me or your mother, which is more important to you? I asked.
It's obvious, isn't it? If it was between you and Mommy... No, Mom. My priority right now is Mom.
He answered, without hesitation. What's with this guy? As I remained silent, the doctor in charge, who was standing nearby, spoke up.
I'm sorry, sir, but your wife... She just told me that she is divorcing you. Therefore, why don't you, as her son, take care of your mother? Or rather, since she's your parent in the first place, it is your role to take care of her, isn't it? Don't you think that's normal? You're asking her to leave the hospital early. Who the hell do you think you are? It's not up to you to decide. I'm the doctor. What?
My husband was flustered on the phone because he was suddenly yelled at by a doctor he had never met. A few minutes before this happened, the doctor in charge had visited me in my hospital room. After I finished asking some question about how I was supposed to spend my time after leaving the hospital, he asked me,
Is there anything else on your mind?
Well, actually, my husband and I are thinking of getting a divorce. I'm worried about my children since my body is in such a state. But I guess you wouldn't be interested in any of this. I laughed weakly, and then a nurse came to visit me, holding the phone. I continued the doctor's words toward my husband. When I'm discharged from the hospital, I'm planning to talk about our divorce. I've wanted to talk for a long time, but I haven't been able to talk much lately because of someone who only sees his mommy. I dared to use the word mommy I had heard. I wondered how he would react, but it seemed that he realized that he could not win us just by him, so he hung up. That was anticlimactic, but I thanked the doctor for his help.
He is an unbelievable man. You must have gone through a lot in your life with him. You have a bright future ahead of you.
The doctor smiled at me, and I smiled back as I agreed. After being discharged from the hospital, of course, I did not return home, but went straight to my parents' house. My husband had never contacted me since that day. There was no reason for me to contact him. However, on the weekend, my husband suddenly visited my parents' house with an unwanted companion. Of course, it was my mother-in-law, who looked completely healed from her sprain.
You say you're going to have a talk like you're the one in charge. You should be ashamed of yourself for involving your grandchildren and your parents in your selfishness.
She raised her voice as she saw me. For my part, I think it's more embarrassing for you to just show up at someone's house and rant and rave in a loud voice. My mother, who said this without hesitation while snickering, was already ready to fight. Contrary to my mother, my father is calm.
Well, look who's here. We can't all be standing in the doorway to talk. You should let them in,
he said to my mother. I left my daughters with my mother and I started. I will now begin our discussion. First, I will never give up custody of my daughters. Then, there is the matter of child support. As I proceeded with my story in a calm manner, my husband looked impatiently at me and said,
Wait a minute. Don't go ahead with the conversation on your own. You don't have to get a divorce. We can just carry on as before. If you're having a hard time, you can stay here for a while, so I'm sure the girls will feel lonely without their father.
What the hell is this man talking about? My husband goes on mumbling. I didn't even want to look at him anymore. To that, my father calmly said,
Yeah, okay. I don't care what you have to say. Can you just fill this in and make your way home? I have a guest waiting in the back.
My father presented my husband with the divorce papers, my part already filled out. His calm face kind of scared me.
Did you hear what Alan said? He's telling you he's not willing to get a divorce. Can't you even listen to others? This is why I hate insane people.
My anger reached its peak at my mother-in-law's statement. What? Who are you to say that? Don't tell me you think you're a sensible person. Because that's impossible. You are like the definition of insane walking around with clothes on. For a second, I thought I was going too far, but I did not regret that statement at all. My mother-in-law's face turned red and tried to use violence towards me when...
"You stupid mother and son over there!"
I heard an angry voice from the other room. The two of them widened their eyes in surprise at the appearance of this person.
"Melanie, why are you here?"
My sister-in-law glared at them.
"I heard Vanessa was out of the hospital, so I came to see her. I should have just cut you off at Dad's funeral. It's embarrassing to have such people as my family. I ask that you never get in touch with me as of today."
And to my sister-in-law, who said this coldly,
"You have always been like that. All you do is talk and act cocky. Alan, on the other hand, is so honest. I should never have had you."
How could she say that to her own daughter? As a mother, I felt nothing but indignation. But my sister-in-law did not back down.
"You're the one who's the same as you've always been. You've always been so mean to me just because your son follows what you say and is cuter to you than me. It's no wonder I have no family now that my father is dead. And I heard that you asked Vanessa to get out of the hospital to take care of your sprain. Are you crazy? Oh yeah, Vanessa and I talked about this earlier with Melinda. Melinda is as pissed off as she's ever been."
At the mention of Melinda, the faces of both of them turned pale. Melinda is my late father-in-law's sister. It seems that even the craziest mother-in-law has someone she doesn't like. That was Melinda. When my mother-in-law was still young, Melinda kept lecturing her until she cried when she used to be overbearing at family gatherings, saying that she was the eldest son's wife. Melinda also lectured her about her comments towards me at my father-in-law's funeral. While I was talking to my sister-in-law about divorce, she suggested,
"Hey, why don't we talk to my aunt about it?"
And sure enough, Melinda was furious. She said she would not invite them to any future gatherings. The area around my parents-in-law's house was almost entirely made up of relatives, so it was given that they would be ostracized. The two of them seemed to realize that too.
"If that happens, we're finished."
To my mother-in-law, shaking in her small, trembling voice, my sister-in-law replied sharp words cut through.
"Don't worry, you've been a failure as a human being a long time ago."
I struggled to hold back my laughter. My husband looked at me with a sudden look.
"Vanessa, please reconsider. It's not like I've been unfaithful or in debt. I'm just happy that my mother counted on me. And lately, you didn't praise me at all when I helped you with the housework and childcare."
In response to my husband's remark, I said, "I hear that the cause of divorce is usually differences in values, and that's true. Who would want a father who only hangs out at his mother's place without taking care of his own children? I don't want that. And as long as you think that you are helping me with housework and childcare, I don't need you." The words were coming out of my mouth so smoothly.
"But Kathy is only 1 year old."
My husband, who was still mumbling at this point, was cut off by my father.
"Hey, Alan, what do you think is the role of a father?"
My father asked as he looked at him straight in the eye.
Well, money. As a father, I make money."
Without delay, my father said,
"What? No, that's not it. That's your personal role, isn't it? And if it's about money, Vanessa has a job too, right? And on top of that, she's very busy with housework and childcare. What the hell are you doing as a father in that house?" "What?"
My husband looked dumbfounded at my father's question.
"I told you when Eleanor was born that from now on you would take over for me to protect my daughter and grandchildren. Can you look me in the eye and tell me that you are doing that? I don't think you can. That's why I told you from the beginning to sign the divorce papers and get out of our life. What do I have to say to make you understand?"
My mother is the type who gets emotional when she is angry. My father, on the other hand, is the opposite. He is quiet and gets angry with a calm face. That is very scary. My husband couldn't say anything. My mother-in-law, who was standing next to him, was also in a state of absent-mindedness, as if her soul had been drained out of her. "Here you go." I hand him a pen. With trembling hands, he finally started to sign. When he had finished writing, I said to him, "I thank you for giving me 2 daughters. Kathy recently learned to walk. You wouldn't know, would you? As a father, can you tell me what they like to play with or what foods they like to eat? I am responsible for my daughters now. Please pay your child support. There is nothing else you can do for them as a father." My cold words made him finally grasp the situation. Tears began to well up in my husband's eyes. In the end, he fell face down on the desk and cried aloud. What was to become of the two of them? It seemed that Melinda gave them a lengthy lecture, but
"I have put up with it for many years. Melinda is a complete stranger to me now that my husband is gone. Alan was just a good, loving child. It's just an early stage to cancer. Just because his stupid wife made a big deal out of it. I'm the victim here. I'm going to sell this house and get the hell out of here."
But my ex-mother-in-law forgot something important. The house was originally owned by my late grandfather-in-law. It was jointly inherited by my father-in-law and Melinda. In other words, the house could not be sold without Melinda's permission.
Oh my, you're still here? And when are you leaving?
Melinda was egging her, but she had nowhere to go, so she seemed to have quieted down completely. As for my ex-husband, he was working for a company owned by his family, but he had to be punished for his actions. He has changed from his desk-oriented job to a salesman, sweating profusely every day. He's not the type of person who is a hard worker, so his performance is always at the bottom of the list. His pride became shredded. He seems to be lying on a bed of nails because many of his co-workers are his relatives. But I think he deserves it, since it is the end result of his own actions. As expected, my ex-husband seems to have realized and moved away from his mother. However, my ex-husband has no one else to turn to but his mother, who seems to be contacting him every day. He seems to be neurotic now. From my point of view, I think they are both crazy, so they should go ahead and do whatever they want to do. I am too busy raising my children to spend a second thinking about them. I feel much better than I did before the divorce. I don't have to cook meals for my ex-husband, who would come home unannounced. I can do housework and childcare at my own pace. I have now returned to work, and I am doing my best with the support of my parents. The biggest source of emotional support is the smiling faces of my daughters. I hope that my ex-husband will regret for the rest of his life that he was not able to watch his beautiful children grow up. Thinking of this, I vow to be a strong mother